trick here is we want to get into that crack. That's why we leave it a little bit loose. So we just kind of, and go from both ways. So you kind of get it on the edges. And we're not going to try and make this look neat. But there is one thing that is very important, and that is you leave nothing proud. By that I mean don't leave anything above the surface. At the moment, it's all over the surface. Can't find my other 6-blade knife. So, nice and flat. Okay, I'm going to leave it just like that. And it looks terrible, doesn't it? But the thing is, we come back, we're going to give that a scrape with this knife, which will only take 15, 20 seconds. It'll be nice and flat, no sanding. Okay, then we're going to go over that again. It might be okay after the second go, but most likely I think it's going to take a third one, but we'll wait and see. So tomorrow we'll come back, we'll scrape that. That for those of you that got smaller holes, and up to about maybe the size of a doorknob hole, watch my other video, how I actually patch a doorknob hole. It's the next day, and I've forgotten to show you how I scrape this. I've scraped this flat.
This is exactly what I'm talking about when scraping. It's just a different patch.
With a scraper, no sanding. If you watch that video that I mentioned earlier about the patching the doorknob hole, I'll show you exactly how I use this as a scraper so that you don't have to sand. And this is 100 times faster than sanding, although you want to sand the very last coat. Now look, well, I want to show you something here, because I've kind of got a little screw up. But let's get a close-up on this so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now here's one of the things I wanted to point out. Okay, it's a little bit of the paper. From that little square piece of gyprock that I put in there, it was still too far above the surface. Now it's not the end of the world, but what it does mean is that I have to fill over the top of that. So I'm going to have a millimeter or maybe 2 millimeters over that. So I'll have a slight little bump there. I don't like that. It's okay here. There's going to be a tall boy here. This won't even be seen. This is why I put the hole here. You can see some discoloration in there. Where it's white, it's completely dry. And where it's, that sort of off color there, it just shows that it's not completely dry yet. And the reason for that is because it's so deep. This is just on the surface. This is going into the crack, so it takes a bit longer to dry. Plus, where I live at the moment, it's winter. It's going to take a couple of days to dry. But even still, I can still go over a patch because that's set. It's not soft. We're ready now to go over our second coat of patch. I'm going to use the same stuff I've used before. I'm not going to use what's called topping compound, which is super easy to sand. Okay, most of the times I don't have that kind of time. I just want to mention that apart from just this patch, I've got quite a few bad ones, but I've also got umpteen little ones. They're all ready to go. So just because I'm showing you this, after I go from here, I do the rest. I finish it. It's only going to take me 10 minutes. So let's do this. When I'm doing that, you can't see it, but because this is the outside of the patch, I've got more pressure pushing on that side. Okay, so can you see? Sorry, I've got more pressure on that side. So when I'm pulling it down, I've got all the pressure on this edge. So I'm bringing it down. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little ridge. There was something in there, a little tiny piece of sand. I'm not going to worry about that because it's not too bad. Now when I put on the other side, I do just the opposite. I put more pressure on this edge, so it's like that. So when I'm pulling it down, I've got more. I'm kind of twisting the knife a little bit to my left, and you can see it's left a ridge there. Well, that's okay because I've got more of it. But you can see here, I haven't done it quite right. So I'm going to go again. There's something that dragged. That's a bit of that paper that came off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put more there and just do that again. And then straight over the top. I'm doing this because I'm doing it this way so I've got that little ridge to cover that really bad spot. Okay, again, so what you're looking for, when you can put your hand over that and it's nice and smooth, and still there's just ever so slight little curve there, and I explained the reason why earlier, but it's pretty darn flat, guys. But what you're looking for here is look at the edges.
And I can tell by looking at all these edges, they look pretty good, except right through here, which means I haven't sanded enough. So don't just take a bit of sandpaper and sand that. Sand it nice and still sand the whole thing until you can see there's a little step there that'll be gone. If there's any doubt, just sand it a bit more. That's perfect. To take note how long that took to sand. It took me longer to explain it than to actually sand it. I probably sanded that in maybe a minute, if not less. So if you're sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding, have a look at the whole system of how I've done that. Okay, there shouldn't be a whole lot of sanding, guys. Those little spots there. Now there's one neat little trick I'm going to show you guys. All these little times when you've got a little nail hole or something, because there's around the edges of all these bad spots, it's kind of protruding just past the surface. So you take your rounded edge of knife or a screwdriver, your screwdriver you've got, and then just round that off a little bit, and it knocks off that high edge around the hole. And the trick is, you don't just drag it across. That worked pretty good though. You squeeze it in first, so it fills up in little nooks and crannies you can't see. And again, don't leave it like that and sand back. Okay, so for me to do that in one pass, probably all 2 seconds. Now if you were to leave that, like they say, and sand back, you're going to spend 5 minutes sanding that. If you don't sand that to where it's perfect, you're going to see the patch after it's painted, and it stands very proud, even though it might be minute above the surface. It'll stand out so proud and look pretty bad. Okay, so remember, what do? Never leave it proud. Now, apart from having holes where you've had pictures and paintings hang up and you wanted to move, that's why you have a hole there. This is probably the next most common thing in houses. It'll always be near a corner or a corner of a window or at the door. Okay, but now you'd be surprised at how many people would just put patch over that. But there's nothing for the patch to go to except for on the surface. So what you do is you take the corner of your blade and you follow it by putting a little pressure in there, and you're just trying to cut a line in there. If you've got tape in there, you want to be a little bit careful. Then you turn your knife sideways, maybe not quite 90 degrees, but you turn it and you follow that line again. You're trying to open it up. You're trying to make a V, like a little V canal in there. And you do that 2, 3, 4 times. If you go too deep, you're going to cut through your tape. It's most likely where there'll be tape, and I can just see the tape there. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to get rid of the little tags. Now again, take your knife and you really force it in there. Okay, really, 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 really hard. And again, what do I always say? Nice and flat.